Well, hello, everybody. We're so glad that Denisha Merriweather has joined us today. She's been to Nebraska a few times, which I'm very grateful for. And I wanted to ask her about some of the things that she's been working on. She is such a wonderful advocate for kids all across the country. And so thanks so much for being with us, Denisha.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks. Well, okay, start off. Denisha founded a group this year called Black Minds Matter. And Denisha, will you tell us a little bit about that group and what's the purpose of the group and why'd you start it?
Yeah, so Black Minds Matter started. There was, of course, the names George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. We've come to recognize these names just in our everyday life. It's become a part of our social fabric. And so after the protests and the civil uprising that just not only happened in our country, but across the world, I've been passionate. I guess I should back up a little bit. I've been passionate about education reform since the sixth grade. I got a scholarship to go to a private school, and so that's really been a part of my life's journey, my story, and my mission to make sure all students have a quality education. And so when all of this stuff, this just civil rights issues started happening, social justice. I got to thinking, it was like, well, we focus a lot, and we should, on Black Lives Matter, that movement, and police brutality and some of the other social justice issues. But the same people on the left who are talking about policing reform refuses to acknowledge education reform, refuses to acknowledge that there's a system in place that's continually destroying Black minds. And so that's why I published an article focusing on that theme, talking about Black minds matter as equally as Black lives matter, really trying to bring and elevate the conversation of education reform in school choice to the light. And so that movement kicked off after the article was published. We've been doing really good. I've gotten so much support. People are like, yeah, that makes sense. They don't understand why, it's not it's not popular as it would be. And so I'm happy to have started this up, and I've gotten a lot of people in the network who are really excited about where it's going to go. And I just look forward to the conversation. Sometimes we just have to kind of approach the narrative of school choice a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And so coming at it at all angles and encouraging everyone to support education freedom for all students in this capacity with Black Minds Matter is a pleasure, and it's pretty fun. So I'm happy to have started it up, and I can't wait to see how much it grows.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Yeah, when you talk about, we definitely have issues that need to be addressed. And I've heard some people talk about the systemic racism that's inherent in our current system, the way that the teachers union is set up and the way that children are assigned to certain schools. So how do you think we could break through that systemic racism that is inherent in our current system? Like what can be done?
Yeah, and you bring that up. It's and that's one of the points I touch on in the article and the video and podcast series that I have, of saying, these two systems of policing and education were founded on racism and really not setting Black people up for success,
Right.
And so first we have to acknowledge that and say, hey, yes, the system that we have that's in existence right now does not cater to, it was not created for African Americans. And so we have to acknowledge that. And then I think the next step is to, one, the public school system wasn't created for African American. It doesn't say that it doesn't help, or it doesn't, African American students, Black kids are not graduating from public schools, but it's, to think about that and say, well, maybe these students might be better served someplace else. Maybe they could be more successful in a school system or in a schooling environment of their parents' choice that's set up for their success, where where the school is catering to their interests. And that's where the conversation of school choice and education freedom comes in. And that's something that we constantly have to come back to. One system and nothing works. We don't have just one bureaucratic system that's controlling all aspects of our life. But in education, students are mandated to go to school. And if this school system is not working for them, they should have the opportunity to go someplace else, especially our most vulnerable kids, especially our lower income kids, our Black students who have been marginalized for years.
Yeah. I think there's more and more recognition of the problem, but it's really interesting to see the way that people come at a solution. So this is I just ran into this morning. This is from the Wall Street Journal today, which is October 7th. And it's about the school district in Evanston, Illinois. And they are recognizing that Black and Latino kids are struggling more than the Asian and white kids in their district. And so here's what this article says that they're proposing to do. Let's see. Okay, so Dr. Horton that I'm going to mention, he's the superintendent there of the public school system. It says, in recognition of the impact of racism, Dr. Horton said, Evanston schools would give students from marginalized groups first priority for seats for in-person learning, and all other students would be taught remotely. This is, quote, about equity for Black and brown students, for special education students, for our LGBTQ students, he said, end quote, during a public meeting held via Zoom. And so there's been some uproar about this proposal because there are, this is part of that one size fits all thing. Like, maybe not all of the students that he's talking about want in person, or maybe they do and there aren't enough seats, but some of the kids who he's saying will be on Zoom want in person. And so people are not happy. He's trying, it sounds like, he's trying to do something to address the racism, but this solution isn't working. What do you think about?
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. That's very prescriptive. That's a carrot and stick approach. And with freedom, that's not that. It just goes against freedom, because now students who are Black and Latino, low income, must go to school, and white students don't. And white Asian students, other students don't. So it is kind of interesting, because it's like, okay, well, you have, and I don't know the background of the income level, but mostly minorities are lower income, and you have a higher percentage of whites who are higher middle and higher income. Well, those families right now, we've all been talking about pandemic pods and all these other solutions where people who have a little bit more money are able to form, which is awesome. That's great for them. Yeah. But what about the students, the ones he's addressing in his, approach to try to help? Right. Those students don't have the resources to keep their safety at the top of the list. And so now that he's required, it doesn't go with freedom, and back in, I'm doing this study since I've started the Black Minds Matter initiative movement, of studying Black people who started schools, and where in the world did school choice and freedom in education become so, I guess, political. And so I'm studying, and you have these people after the civil rights movement who started their own schools. And actually it was before the civil rights movement, after slavery was crushed, people started their own schools. And then you had Black people still weren't able to go to schools with white kids, and they constantly continued to start their own schools, and they supported themselves, and they had their own autonomy. And then, to make the long story short, somewhere in between there, it became a political issue, and now students are forced to go to a public school. And
Yeah.
so it just makes me think like now students are once again in 2020 being forced to go to a public school and not being empowered to go out and create their own pathways of education.
Right.
Because that's what it really should be about. Our mind is so powerful. We can learn, and kids are so smart. It's like, why not just let them be free to learn and not forcing them into one system or one mold. But
Right.
yeah, that's kind of interesting, and I'm glad that the community is saying, hey, we're not pleased with this. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, those
the,
top down things, I mean, they never really work,
not at
where
all,
somebody at the top is like, okay, I've got the solution. And then he says
right?
what it is. I was thinking about, so some of these Black and Latino kids who will be having the in-person learning, which it sounds like is considered to be the gold standard in their school district. Like for a lot of those kids, was it even working before?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
like you said, the gold standard, it's like, who's to say that in-person meeting is the gold standard? That's something that we've just been doing for so long.
Right.
And COVID has really caused us to rethink how we approach education. And
Yeah.
so maybe virtual doesn't work for everybody, maybe in-person doesn't work for everybody, but allowing all of those options to be available is what's most important.
Right. So for you personally, when you were young and you got that scholarship, like what was the difference? Like let's say the year before you had the scholarship and the year after. Like was it a substantial difference for you?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't even say a year. I mean, within days. I often tell people I went to my local public school up until the 5th grade. I failed the 3rd grade twice. When
Oh.
I walked through the door, teachers would sigh. They would like,
Oh, I can't imagine.
and it was burdensome. I mean, it crushed my confidence. I wasn't a good reader. I wasn't good at math. And so having, even when I came into school, the teachers kind of agree with all of the mental things that I was telling myself.
Yeah.
It crushed me. And that happened for 7 years because I failed the 3rd grade twice.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I got a scholarship that was state funded, unlike Nebraska. Hopefully you guys will have some type of state
Someday.
sponsored. But I got a scholarship that was supported by the state and in Florida. And I went to a small private school, and that was the number one. It was a small school. There were literally about 100 kids, K through 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very small. And I noticed the difference like from the day one. I mean, when I walked through the doors, the teachers on the first day of school, I was like, they were all smiling and stuff. And I was like, okay, this is not going to last,
Yeah. Why are they smiling?
Yeah, like after the first day, they're going to stop, they're going to find out that these kids, we actually don't like them and we don't want to be here. Because I saw this
Breaks
play
your
out.
heart, huh?
But it didn't. Those smiles stayed. Every morning they greeted us at the door. I knew that I was loved from the first day. And when I say the transformation was dramatic, I met with my teacher before I started the summer before. And she helped me with my reading. She helped me learn my times tables so that I at least, get a little bit caught up entering the 6th grade. And I made the honor roll the first 9 weeks. And that was something that had never happened before. So the transformation was dramatic. And it was because I had people who were investing in me, who loved me. And I was in an environment that was conducive for learning. And I think that's what some kids don't have.
Yeah. So I know you and your work have a pretty big picture of what's going on nationwide with school choice. What are the biggest obstacles for freedom in education? Like what is stopping our culture from really embracing school choice and the Black Minds Matter movement? What are we up against here?
Well, needless to say, we are up against the teachers union. They are they're adult and they're maintaining adult jobs, adult interests, and they're not focused on students. So that's number one. who
Yeah.
we're up against financially. Like, they have a lot of money. They thankfully a Supreme Court case just passed that says that it's illegal for them, unconstitutional for them, to just take money away from teachers' paychecks without their consent.
Isn't it
Um,
crazy that it took the Supreme Court to do that? It's kind of mind-blowing.
like any other system, and I think that's something that people don't understand, any other system that would do something as crazy as that would
Yeah.
have already been crushed. Like, think about Facebook or Google just taking money
Right.
from their employees. Like, they would have been slammed a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the teachers union has been getting away with it for so long. But now, thankfully. And then the second thing I would say is communication. A lot of people don't know about this issue, which is so weird.
Yeah. Because it affects
People,
so many people.
yeah. And people don't know, one, that this liberty is their right. Like, they
I love
have, yeah, like, this is their right. Like, you should be able to choose where you go to school. Someone
Right.
should not just spoon feed your child education without your consent, without your input.
Right.
And then once they learn about, hey, yeah, I should have this freedom, and then it's fighting and making them into advocates to help them to fight for themselves. And so I would say those are the three. We have, a big organization who has a lot of money and doesn't want to see things change. And then we have a communications issue where we have to, teach people about this movement and then make them into advocates.
Yeah. It's daunting. You think about, just parents, we don't have the financial resources of a big union. We don't have a lot of time to work on this sort of thing, but it's kind of frightening if you think about it. You have this giant union, which is basically like keeping systemic racism in our culture. So like, what can parents do to try to reach this liberty, so that their kids can have some of the opportunities that you had that really changed your life?
Yeah. Well, one, I think that article you mentioned in the Wall Street Journal about, just a prescriptive method, a top-down approach, the superintendent saying you will have to go back to school, and parents and community members saying, no, like, this is not what we want for our children. I think that's step number one. Even if it's at a small level, if your kid is at a district school, if your kid is in a public or private school, and there's something in the system that's not working for your kid, to just say no. And maybe that doesn't make headlines. Maybe that's not changing the entire state or the whole district, but it's at least giving you some type of empowerment to say, no, this is not what I don't like this. I don't want this for my child.
Right.
And so I think that's number one. Number two, at a bigger level, nationally, we have a Voices for Choice webpage that we publish stories. We almost have 600 stories of parents, students, educators, business leaders, kind of everybody, saying we want school choice. We want education freedom. And some people have shared their story to say, like, we have accessed this and this is why it's so great. And others are saying, like, we don't have it, but we know that it would be so great if we could. Yeah, they want it so bad. So I think that's something too that people can do. Just continue to talk about it, share your story, say that, hey, where's my dog? say that, we want freedom in education, and let it be known, keep saying, and most of the battles don't happen at the national, well, they happen at the national level, of course, but most of the battles happen at the kitchen table, at the family reunions, at the cookouts, when you're sitting next to your friend. And those are the people that you have to convince. And I'm not going to lie, when I first started to share my story and people would hear, like, school choice, oh no, like, that's too political. That's, those are Republican, thing. Yeah. And I would have to say, like, it was friends and family who I would have to spend my entire time convincing. And it paid off. And now they're like voting for school choice. So that's where the conversations need to take place.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And I mean, moms tend to talk about their kids and the issues. And, a lot of the people that I talk to, it's friends who call me and say, something's not working right at the school district. What do I do? And so that's really good. We gotta talk to each other, share those stories, and explain there are other ways to do this.
Yeah. And no kid should go to school and experience trauma. Like,
no.
I got my master's in social work and I saw so much trauma. Like, I experienced trauma in school, and we don't think about those words, but kids should not have PTSD from school. Like,
that's
it's required for them to go there. We should make sure that every kid is in a safe and nurturing environment. And if they're not, they should have the freedom to go someplace else. Yeah. And most of our stories, the ones that I mentioned, where people have exercised education freedom, the sad thing is most of those are out of trauma. They didn't have a good experience. They were in an environment that was not conducive to learning. Their parents were frustrated. The students were frustrated and upset, couldn't learn. And it wasn't until they received a different option that they were able to. No student should experience trauma in school.
No. Yeah. Oh, and that would be a good goal for us, is let's get these kids having some freedom right from the start. So when they very first start school, they're in a place that really meets their needs. And that's what we're working so hard for here in Nebraska, because we just don't have any of those options. Now, most states do, right? Am I right in saying that like 47 states?
Yep, there are only 3 that don't.
3 left.
Yep. And you guys are one. But I have hope for Nebraska. That's why I love Nebraska. I've been back so many times, and I will continue to come back because I believe in you guys. I believe in the state.
We so appreciate your help. Love it when you come. Okay, so I want to send readers to some places where they can learn more. So you mentioned Voices for Choice website. Is that just voicesforchoice.com?
.net. Voicesforchoice.net.
Voicesforchoice.net. And then where can people find out more about Black Minds Matter?
Yes, so you can go to blackmindsmatter.net also.
Okay.
So Black Minds with an S .net, blackmindsmatter.net.
Okay. Now you mentioned a little bit earlier the article that you initially wrote. Where is that published?
Yeah, you can read that on Real Clear.
Okay.
realcleareducation.com. I believe that's there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, realcleareducation.com. And for people who are listening and can't see your name on the screen, Merriweather is MERRIWEATHER.
I know, so long.
But it's a beautiful name. Yeah, good. Okay, do you have any last words for moms and dads in Nebraska who are frustrated and need something else that they can do for their kids? Because I know there are some. I hear from them.
Especially now, people are frustrated. I would say keep that energy, because that's energy that needs to be thrust in a direction. And so, one, if you have the energy, put it towards write your state legislator, let him know that, or her know that this is something that is important to me and we need to change it. Yeah. Or if you want to thrust that energy and going to voicesforchoice.net and saying that, hey, this is my story and I want education freedom and I want to help. Or you can thrust the energy into your community and say, hey, we really need to talk about this to make this happen, and team up with Rachel at School Choice Nebraska to take a trip or to continue to advocate.
Oh, that's great. Good. So on your Voices for Choice, those are not all like wrapped up success stories. Some of those are people who are in search of a good solution for their kids, right?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
We have some Nebraska stories. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those. It's really nice to see those stories, because like you said, I mean, you hear them from your friends and your neighbors, but sometimes that's as far as the story is heard.
Exactly.
And even if you don't yet have a solution, understanding that other parents are going through the same things is helpful. And then you can kind of work together from there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for all that you do, Denisha. We really appreciate you. When you come and we hear about your successes, it really gives us inspiration to keep pushing, to keep working on this issue. Because we know kids all over the country are finding things that work better for them, and we want that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to put those links in the show notes so that people can find them. And again, we just really appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thank you too, Rachel, because it really takes a certain kind of person to fight in the trenches. And for you in Nebraska, it's a very unique situation because you guys don't have school choice. So you're really fighting for an idea there and trying to get people to buy into this idea so it becomes reality. And so I definitely commend you for all of your work. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. We love to have you anytime. We'll have to have you come back again. Okay, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
The school choice movement in Nebraska needs you. Join in the conversations and stay up to date by liking the School Choice Nebraska Facebook page, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and listening to the podcast. School choice is truly the civil rights issue of our time. We're working toward education freedom and achievement for all kids in our state, not just the wealthy and well-connected. Let's do this.